2.5 years ago, the Matildas became Australia's favourite national sporting team. Their run to the semi-finals of the 2023 World Cup on home soil transcended code preferences, gender boundaries, and realistic impressions for most of the cultural impact that football can have in this country. The Asian Cup is, yes, a very different competition, but the opportunity for our Matildas to win over the hearts and minds of Australians all over again, and maybe even win a trophy, is just too tantalising to resist. It all kicks off this Sunday evening in Perth, and we can't wait.
And how good is it to have the honour and the privilege of having another tournament on home soil, regardless of the context? Always a very, very special thing to experience, and can't wait to get involved. I will just say one tidbit: my tournament branded scarf is not going to arrive in time for the opener, and that does make me very sad.
We saw 2.5 years ago in 2023 just the amount of attention that fell on this team, and obviously, like any sport, like any football team, you win more, people pay more attention. And then, in some of the windows since in these major tournaments, the Matildas haven't been doing as much winning. So maybe some of that fever is worn off. But to get them back on home soil, I know as soon as they play on Sunday night, it's going to pick up again. And the Matildas fever is going to sweep through. And I'm really excited for that change in from one side of the coin to the other. It feels like we're going to flip back to that kind of 2023 moment in time.
It's kind of one of the few guarantees we have in football in this country that is, when the Matildas are playing, people are going to get around them and they're going to support them. And, we saw it in the lead-in as well. They played in Adelaide and sold out Optus Stadium. And, that was just a friendly match. It was, there's nothing much on the line there. Of course, the big news in that one was Sam Kerr getting some minutes and coming back into the squad and things. But, no, I mean, it's always going to be good. And it's just nice to hear people talking about football in a positive light. And, we're always, talking about there's so many negatives in the game and things like that. But when the Matildas are playing, and when the Socceroos as well in the World Cup in particular, it kind of feels like it's this moment of just national pride, I suppose, where it's like, this is our team, and we get around them, and it helps that both teams, but particularly the Matildas, have been historically very, very strong. So this is, I liked your introduction, Lachie, where it's okay, it's not the most grandiose silverware, but it is the chance to win silverware on home soil. And we've kind of, I think in the lead up to it, been billing it as such, that this is a huge opportunity to, yes, the World Cup did a lot of really great things. This is a chance to kind of solidify that legacy. And if they can win the Asian Cup on home soil, I mean, that's something that you talk about for a long, long time, right? It only comes around once every, I don't know, however long it's going to be now before it's hosted here again. It's the kind of opportunity you don't want to squander.
And I think, Matt, obviously it's fair to say that there's not the same intensity of conversation around the team in the build up to this tournament as there was, during and in the, stages after the World Cup. But I also don't think that's a bad thing. I think what we do a lot, especially when we talk about this team, is rightly or wrongly, we compare it to men's football, especially, we just grew up in men's football. It's kind of what we're used to. But the audiences and the way that people interact with women's football is actually very different. And it's a lot of the time, in stadium atmosphere, it's very family orientated and trying to get groups of people going to games. From a following along perspective, it's, I think very reactionary. Like, we see things happen and then we react to those things. And that is not a negative. That is just a characteristic of what it is. So there hasn't been as much conversation in the build up, but I just don't think that's what we should expect either, because I think when that first game is played and everyone watches them on TV and all the stuff that comes out of that, it'll really build the momentum with this team as the tournament progresses.
Yeah, and it's also the nature of the sort of AFC pecking order, that things will be fairly processional in the way that they play out as well. So I think in terms of what we expect from the Matildas, we kind of have a bit of an idea going in. They are probably going to top Group A. They unfortunately, with the draw, are likely to meet Japan in the semi-final and not a potential final, which is a whole other kettle of fish. But particularly on the squad, I find it a very interesting talking point, because honestly, whether you're a casual fan or whether you're people like us that can talk about it to wear black and blue in the face, the Matildas are going through a really big transition at the moment. And for me, this tournament doesn't become about Sam Kerr being a legendary player again. It doesn't become about the Mackenzie Arnolds and the Hayley Razzos. For me, the emphasis should actually be on the Caitlin Torpies, the Holly Macks. Like, that there is actually a grounds for these women to really grow into being full-time Matildas. And when you've got a game like, your group A game against Iran, where you really should be rotating some of those players in and letting them show their stuff, I think the big thing that we need is we need to break out play up, because the golden generation is coming to an end, and there's been a few signs here or there, even in Tony G's, the back end of Tony G's era, where we really had to ask a lot of questions about where the future of the Tillies is going. And so from that perspective, I think there should be a lot of emphasis on the squad. There should be a lot of emphasis on the way that Joe wants to set them up, because there's a big diversity and a big challenge in you're playing against a very stubborn Iran team one day, and then, South Korea are a total threat in attack, and the dynamic is very different. You've got to be a bit more defensive minded. So the diversity in games that are being played, and the rotation that will need to happen within the squad is well worth talking about in depth as well.
And it's not just the fact that we have all these new players that maybe need to be blooded in or something, Jacob, but the fact that this is a 12-team tournament. So you have your groups of 4, and then you have a quarterfinal, semi-final, and a final. A 6-game run in only 3 weeks. So you are playing 2 games of football per week all the way through. Like, even for a major tournament, that's fairly condensed, right? So this is a tournament, like we talked back when the Olympics were going on, and how narrow those squads had to be. It became a lot about versatility and picking players that could go in different positions. But this is almost a different style, whether the squad is actually a little bit bloated, but because the games come thick and fast like that, you have to be wary of fitness as you build through as well.
Yeah, and as Matt kind of touched on as well, there's going to be varying levels of intensity in each of those games as well. So what you're actually going to do is you can't kind of just have a normal, performance and then, kind of rest cycle and just go through that like you normally would, because, well, yeah, the intensity level of each game is going to be very different. Some are going to be much more physical than others and things like that. So that's the other side to it as well, where, that's, I suppose, the benefit of having kind of a bigger squad is that it's going to be used. There's not it doesn't feel like there's really any players that are just like tokenistic, just thrown in there because, it's a case of every player that has been picked in this squad, Joe has faith in, number one, but also is kind of thinking, I'm probably going to have to use them at some point in this tournament, whether it's just because of, fitness things, whether it's, they match up better against the opposition, whatever it might be. It's yeah, you're spot on, Lachie. There's a versatility requirement to it. So it's also going to be a bit of a test of Joe Montemuro's, managerial style as well, and how he's able to cope with that and deal with that. It's he's not had that with the Matildas so far, right? It's been a lot of this kind of just preamble, this build up into the tournament, but now all of a sudden it's okay, you've figured out presumably what your starting 11 you want it to look like, but it's how can you manipulate the squad and the players that you've brought along with you to actually continue to get results in games where you're going to need rotation. So it's going to be a test for him as well. So yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. And I also like that it's exciting that there's these players that are going to be coming through. You mentioned Caitlin Torpey and Holly Mackmat, that are like, we've seen how quality they are and how good they can be, and now this is their chance, right? And it's their chance on home soil. Like, you can't really write it better. If you wanted a transition moment for a team, it would be a tournament on home soil. Like, it's just coming together really nicely. So I mean, there's a lot of reasons to be really looking forward to the Matildas and their performances in this one, because it's going to be a real strong show of where they're at as a team in this transition period, how Joe manages these really difficult tournaments, and then it's for those legacy players that chance to go on and win a trophy. So it's just, there's so many great little storylines that go through and just kind of intertwine together, and it's going to make it a fascinating tournament.
Right, Matt, I want you to walk us through game by game in the group stage. So for the Matildas, it's the Philippines, Iran, and then we finish off with that South Korea game. Definitely looking at South Korea as probably the biggest opposition in this group. But what can we expect from these teams in the first week and a half of the tournament?
Well, we're not exactly unfamiliar with the Philippines, right? Like, we've seen a lot of them in recent years. Sadly, Serena Bolden, to the extent that she could have been around as a bit more of a senior figure this time around, unfortunately she's done her ACL. She's not part of the fold. But the familiarity of that team, I mean, it's a lot of those names that went and got A-League experience. A lot of players out of the American college system. You're talking your Savickis, your Jess Cowarts, Angie Beard. Like, it's a very familiar team. And, they all know exactly what to expect in the opening game. Look, I I am quite upset that because when we go back to that Olympics qualifying in late 2023, we saw this exact game, a big sellout at Optus Stadium, and the Matildas sort of just ran riot against the Philippines, and it was just like, okay, this is what this is. And for that to be the opening game of the Asian Cup, kind of left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth, to be honest. But the irony of it also is that for all of the kind of composure and talent that the Philippines have, they do realistically stand a chance of being second in the group. And I only say this because in reference to South Korea, and I've sort of abandoned your question already here, but I'll just touch on it. That third game against South Korea isn't necessarily like winner takes all, like some people may build it up. I think South Korea are actually in an interesting position where a lot of those veteran players that they have are more sort of domestic based now, and a team that in some cycles would have been very European based and been like a proper powerhouse. They're just not. There's most of the team is Korean based, and that's not to say that the likes of Casey Fair, who's in Angel City, in the US, can't be a big star. I mean, she's been in that South Korean national setup since she was 16 years old. You know, this is the kind of impact that some of their players can have. So I'm I'm not completely poo-pooing South Korea's potential to maybe be a group winner, but I think that they themselves are going through a bit of a transition, and that ultimately means that Group A can have a bit of spice to it, and then there's Iran, and I think with Iran being in the group, again we've already seen the exact game play out in Perth, right? It was all out defence, only a tight 2-0 win. The likes of Amy Sayer were kind of being blooded in that time, and yeah, look, it was a game where I think we just sort of knew exactly what we were going to get. Iran as a team, though, and again, for everything that's sort of going on politically in the country, Iranian women have really, really good access to football through the indoor game, and they have one of the best futsal teams in the world. There's a lot of very technically gifted players that are being blooded in, and BAM Khartoum, one of their biggest clubs, is consistently featuring and doing well at the Women's Champions League as well. So they're not pushovers, but they obviously are the pot 4 team here, right? So, I think it's a very, very good mix of what you would want in a tournament scenario. But again, just with that sort of natural order coming into effect, it is a bit predictable and a bit processional. But yeah, look, I think again, the biggest thing is to just note that you would hope from a Matildas perspective, especially going into the Gold Coast for that Iran game second up, you want to see that rotation. It just has to happen. I know that a lot of people in the women's football community as well has been banging on about Jada Wyman finally getting her cap, and
it's never going to happen, Matt. Let's
just one particular person I can think of.
If look. If you're going into a game where you know that you're actually not really going to be threatened that much, you might as well change the goalkeeper, right? Like the irony is, Iran and Uzbekistan are another team at the tournament. They both actually, like, some of their better players and some of their players that have gone out and played in Europe are actually like number 9s. They're attacking players, but when you're up against the likes of South Korea and Australia, your attacking players aren't going to have that much of an opportunity to shine. So I think it's just very, very interesting looking at that and looking at how they might manipulate it. And can you imagine if the Iranian women's team come out, same stadium by the way, and do what Bahrain did to the Socceroos? That would be something.
Gold Coast Stadium is going to become cursed. It's cursed.
No, but look, I think it's tournament football at the end of the day. So things can happen, but on this stage in particular, the ability for things to happen is less so, and particularly in this group. Maybe not in another group. I don't know how much you want me to touch on the rest of the tournament. I know we're not really here to talk about it.
We're just going to stick it to this group for now. We've got the Dubcast.
Okay. All right.
You spent a fair bit of time, to be fair, crafting a very good tournament preview.
I did. And there's one team in one group that I'm just going crazy for at the moment, but that's all right. Don't worry.
Well, there
you go. There's your little teaser. Head over to the Dubcast. Head over to the Dubcast. Matt, Burke, and Pletty have done a full, I think it's like hour and a half plus preview for the tournament. So if you want to go further in depth beyond just the Matildas and their group as well, the Dubcast is the place to go. I want to touch on some of the individual players, not just the squad and who made the squad, but who's really going to have an impact on the tournament. So crucially, in the last couple of days since the squad has been named, we've learned that Tegan Micah has unfortunately had to withdraw, who would have and should have been the number one goalkeeper for the Australians. She's had a long history with concussion, and unfortunately, another recent incident has pushed her out of the tournament. She's just not able to get back in time. So that gives an opportunity for Chloe Lincoln to come in. But Jacob, it's Mackenzie Arnold, the Minister of Defence, who's going to be out there on the pitch, at least in the number one spot, you'd imagine, for the Matildas. And I think a lot of people are going to see her name on the team sheet and go, yeah, that makes sense. Last time we saw her, she saved like 4 penalties against France and sent us through to the semi-final of the World Cup. That makes sense. But the truth of the matter is a lot has happened since then. Especially, I think the She Believes Cup was really the turning point where Tegan Micah came in and said, this spot is mine. And Mackenzie has to deal with that and then come in and do a job for the national team.
Yeah, it's one of those ones we see a lot in international football where you kind of sometimes have to just look past recent history with a player's performance and just go, are they the one who is going to lead us in this tournament and be the one that's going to make the difference? And when put, back against the wall, having to step up, we have seen Mackenzie Arnold do it. And like, I would be surprised to not see her start the first game, to be honest. And then, obviously anything can happen from there. I don't know. If it's just she continues on that kind of weird form and doesn't put in a great performance, then it's the rotation comes into play a little bit perhaps. But she's just, I think at this point, it's one of those ones, you need a leader in the team, in that back line, and somebody who, has shown that they can step up and perform when they're needed to, and that has done it reliably for most of their career. And okay, sure, it's been kind of a troubling, when was the World Cup now? 2 years ago? 2.5 years. Like, it's been kind of up and down in form and things for Mackenzie Arnold, but she's one of those ones that fans are just going to be, wanting to see out there. She's got that, I hate to say it, she's got that grit, right? that we're always talking about with Australian teams.
Aussie DNA.
That's right. And just kind of the ability to fight through things. She's really strong aerially, which is a massive advantage to have because you just shut out that entire aspect of the game for other teams. Like, it's crazy that there are even questions over her, to be honest, because of what she has done in the past. But that's kind of the ruthless world of football, right? Is if all of a sudden you're not performing at that extremely high level that you have shown, people start to call you into question. But I think she'll be fine, to be honest. Like I said, maybe it is a case of she comes in, doesn't do too great, and Joe goes, right, okay, well, what are my options now moving forwards? Do I have to replace her? But I don't think that'll be the case. I think she'll be fine. I think she kind of steps up in these competitions. So, I trust her. I reckon she's got it.
One thing that I'm really looking forward to in this tournament is seeing what the evolution of particularly of European football and the impact that has on some of our players, and really seeing that established core group of players playing at a really high level. I just want to see them dominate. And I'm thinking of the likes of a Steph Catley at Arsenal, Kyra Cooney-Cross there as well, Caitlin Ford. They're the trio that I went to first, but the likes of Ellie Carpenter as well, who's gone from Lyon, who was 5 years ago definitely up there in terms of the women's football club in the world to be at, and now gone to Chelsea, very very successful in their own right. And I think the top of that list, which is going to get a lot of people very excited, Matt, is Sam Kerr. Back, fully fit. It's been a very difficult 2.5 years ever since the World Cup. She's been out injured for a long time. She's back playing regularly for Chelsea. She just scored in her most recent appearance as well before hopping off the plane. I want to see Sam Kerr score goals. It's honestly as simple as that. I want to see Sam Kerr.
I think everyone in Australia does, Lachie. I think that's
exactly.
Kind of the top of the list is Sam Kerr score a lot. It's like right there. That's the top one.
I want to see Sam Kerr score goals.
No, I get it. There's obviously a lot of appeal. It just to a lot of the wider community, and I get that, like, the tournament's main demographic are families and influencers, so who cares? Like, let's just get the backflips out and score 5 goals a game. Why not? I get it. I get it. I really do. But the game has to move on. You have to understand that when we were last in an Asian Cup final, not last in an Asian Cup final, but won the Asian Cup, the only Asian Cup the Matildas have won in 2010. She scored in that game, and that was 16 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's been at the heart of it for so long, and yes, she's got the fame now that, you know, someone in her shoes just didn't have, and you've got like the West Aussie themed Nike boot that was really sick that came out, and things like this, where her cultural phenomenon is still sticking with it. But I think if you talk to the likes of Paletti and Burke about this, right, I think there's a very, very honest evaluation about the fact that, like, she is actually pretty damn close to retirement, and, like, when it happens, it's going to hit like a ton of bricks. And this is where I'm sorry to sort of go back to it, but for me, like, the tournament has to be about who else can we actually see come out to the point where we can look at the next, you know. So I mean, this is also, it doubles as World Cup qualifying as well, right? Like, the Brazil World Cup is next year. Like, we've got to really think about it, and just having the sugar hit now, when we've got a really big potential fixture coming against a North Korea, a Japan, a South Korea, even the Philippines in of themselves, it'll be a big occasion on the night. I just want to see it be a little bit more than just the Sam Kerr show. And this is not to say that it won't be really awesome to see her do it, especially on Western Australian soil. Like, yes, I want that. Of course, we all want it, but there's a bigger piece of Matilda's history going on here now. You know, we've managed to get football to encapsulate the hearts and the minds of the nation, and now there's the time to really just move on and be really serious about it, because yeah, look, I don't know. I think that there needs to be more to the brand than just the fanaticism and whatever else. So
here we go. Though, counter question to that is, how much do you move on in, you know, a tournament on home soil? Like, how much is the prioritization just, let's win this? Like, let's not blow
what
ourselves.
that's talking about is not necessarily not picking her, right? It's more about the perception of what's going on.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. But also just because, like, there's not other big games to go into. The whole reason the Matildas have been playing hodgepodge friendlies for two to 3 years now is because you have the World Cup, you have your continental tournament, and that's it. And this is, like, by the way, this is the last tournament where that's going to be the case. They are moving to a proper World Cup qualification cycle for 2031. But this is just the problem. We've got this, and then we've got Brazil, and there's just, like, it just, to me, it seems like it's going to be a really big problem. Like for me, it kind of screams like the Matildas are going to get, like, embarrassed at the World Cup, because there has to, in that serious environment, you've got to find a way to get the ball rolling. And again, you know, she found it, to be fair, in 2023, there was enough comments about her coming back from injury, not everything that was going on with the squad. She still found a way to score an incredible goal, you know, against England.
That was amazing.
You know, do you know what I mean?
I don't remember that goal at all. And that never happens, as far as I'm concerned. The end result of that game is the only
quick
thing
little tangent.
Yeah.
I remember I went to Amy Park to watch that game, to watch the semi-finals. So I was in the stands, and just, I've never been in a place with so many people in a venue going as crazy for a thing that wasn't even happening in that place. You know what I mean? Like, the celebrations of that goal, just, they were happening on the big screen, was amazing. Next level.
Yeah, look, and I mean, we all have World Cup stories. One that I would personally like to tell a few anecdotes on before we sort of close the segment off. But again, I just think that, like even if it's Amy Sayer coming out and having, like, an impressive 2-goal game against Iran or something like this, like, I just need to see that, so that I know that ahead of that World Cup cycle, this team just makes something else of itself. And
you want proof that there's something else there, you know?
We actually need to see it, because there's not the proving grounds for them to be able to simulate the high intensity environment. There's no World Cup qualification cycle.
That's fair.
I don't want to poo-poo your sentiment, because I like, in my heart of hearts, obviously I agree. Like, her winning the Golden Boot, us, you know, making a final off her back, causing a shock result. Like, we thought the Bayich moment at that same stadium in Perth was such a big seminal moment to finally beat Japan for the first time in 17 years. The women's team also have, like, a really, really horrible history there that they need to throw behind them. You know, it was in the final in Amman in Jordan in 2018. There was this horrible mistake that Mackenzie Arnold made. She got chipped, and there was just this look on her face of, oh my God, I've just lost us silverware, and that game lives in the back of my mind just like it does for the men's team. I feel that there's a really, really big moment in the Tillies being able to make a future here as well. So, rant over.
Yeah, I feel almost like a responsibility just to push back at that line of thinking just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
Just a little bit, because I think it's kind of been a fashionable thing with Sam Kerr to kind of go, well, actually, no, it's about the Matildas, but I did it again. The Matildas.
He's done it again.
But if you look back over like the past 2.5 years, because of Sam's injury in the build up to the World Cup, obviously she had that England moment, which is just incredible. But then like the almost 2 years that she spent out with injury afterwards, a lot of that modern Matildas fandom doesn't actually include Sam Kerr, at least playing on the pitch. She's almost like this mythological figure that everyone's talking about and like, oh, what an impact she's made to the Matildas. But there's a lot of people who haven't seen that consistently in action. So I hope she gets that moment. It is obviously, of course, about the team. She cannot do it on her own, nor should she be expected to. But I want to see her have another moment. I want to see everyone appreciate her for the career she's had in this era of the wildly popular Matildas as well. And one other player I want to pick out, Mary Fowler-Jacob. She's obviously one of Australia's best talents. She spent a lot of time out with injury. She's just come back into the Man City team. She came off the bench a couple of weeks ago, had 1 or 2 more weeks off. Then she did start a match just before coming to Australia. So I think like another name, one of the biggest names of the team, of course, people are going to hope that she plays a big role. They might not get it as much, at least early on in the tournament.
Yeah, and was it Man City as well, I think, came out and said basically that they were hoping to help prepare her for this tournament anyway. So that's why she hasn't had a huge number of minutes after coming back from injury, is that they were also looking towards this as a chance for her to get some more minutes under her belt and kind of rehab back into the form that she has shown already in a relatively short career. Yeah, she's one of those players that is going to, I think, be a crucial part of, as we were talking about at the start of this segment, that rotation, right? She's probably not going to start any games, but to have a player like her available to come off the bench is going to be such a huge game changer for Joe Montemurro. Like, to be like, we just need something. We need somebody who's going to give us a bit of a spark. Oh, we've got Mary Fowler on the bench, right? Just get her the ball, feed her the ball, and see what she can do. One of those really exciting players. So I think that is kind of what we're going to see from her, and so it's going to put her in that position, I think, maybe a few times, of needing to be the difference maker in a deadlock, or Australia are under the pump and they need somebody to come in and do a job, and there's going to be a lot of responsibility falling onto her shoulders right off the back of a pretty serious injury, right? So it's going to be it's going to be a lot of asking for her to do, but it's also a case of Joe backs her, right? Otherwise, she wouldn't have been picked, right? We know the talent that she does have. We know she can do that job. So it's going to be really exciting to see her coming back into the fold as well. Yeah, I would be surprised to see her start. Even I think late into the tournament, just because of how compacted it all is. I just don't think it's realistically a possibility, but for sure she's going to have massive impact minutes off the bench, and it's going to be one of those key squad players where if she can put in some good performances, that's going to help the Matildas out massively.
All right, final question before we move on to some men's national team chat, Matt. But on the narrative of Joe Montemurro as the coach, we sat, what was it, 10, 11 months in the end without a national team coach for the women's side, as Football Australia clearly knew exactly how they wanted. Potentially there might have been a misstep early on and letting him go to Lyon just before the Olympics. People have different perspectives on that. But the fact is he's here now, and it kind of lines up with what you were saying about the calendar as well, and the fact that it is all just friendlies in that kind of the 2 years apart from the Olympics, right? You have the Olympics, then you move on, and then it's the Asian Cup. There were no competitive fixtures in there, and Joe's essentially had to work through friendlies. They got the coach they wanted in the end, but I guess maybe there's a little bit of a safety cushion. Again, we've talked about the potential procession of the early parts of the tournament. You do maybe just have those 1 or 2 games to work your way in a competitive setting.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that Asia has a really big issue with like a procession or a gap where the golfing class takes a really, really big leap when you get to those elite 4 or 5 teams. And even then, the likes of China and Korea are on like a historic downfall as well. So really, in my opinion, there's only 3 teams capable of winning it, which means there's going to be a quarterfinal where when you look at the big 5, 2 of them are going to have to face each other. When you look at the semi-finals, 2 of those 3, and it will be Japan and Australia if they both top their groups, going to match up. Imagine for a second we have to play an India or a Chinese Taipei, who are a third place team out of Group C, or whoever it is out of Group B, rather. Mind going blank, it would be Uzbekistan or Bangladesh. If we then jump from a team of that caliber to then, oh my god, it's semi-finals day against Japan, that is just absurd. Like, do you know what I mean? Like having the third place teams come into that fold, the jump and just the shift in mentality, where it's like the form of games would have gone from questionable but comfortable, probable win against the Philippines. Then you've got your Iran, where they're playing Iran ball, and we're pretty comfortable, in being able to get a result from it. Then you face South Korea, and it's a bit more of a challenge. Then you jump back down in quality to play, let's say, Uzbekistan, for argument's sake, in the quarterfinal. Then there's the big kahuna. Just see how that just doesn't line up as a tournament in terms of it being able to challenge you in the right way. It also means you go from match day 3 against South Korea thinking, okay, here's the big crescendo, only to then have a really weak quarterfinals opponent. I don't know how the hell you manage that as a Joe Montemurro. I don't know which players need to come in form at the right time. I don't know if, because the one thing with Tony G was he always took a bajillion and 1 years to make a decision, it was never about being able to, rotate as much. And when he did rotate, he put them out to dry, and they lost to Portugal 7-0, if you guys remember that. Yeah. So there was just a lot of really odd stuff that happened. And I think with Joe, and because of the weird dynamics of the tournament, you almost run the risk of there being too much of that. There's not going to be enough consistency in who you're playing and how it sort of pans out across that 3 weeks. The schedule is where you can maybe balance that, though. It's an intense schedule anyway, so maybe the team just does need to rotate a lot. I don't know. But it's a really, really important question to be asking, because, yeah, this is a tournament that is just so unbelievably unique. The Women's Asian Cup has a bizarre history unlike anything you've ever... Actually, read into it. The first tournament, there was a state team from Western Australia, St. George Cross, and New Zealand. And by the way, the first female champions of Asia was New Zealand. They're not even here. So it's just, and then China won 9 in a row and stuff like this, and it's just like this tournament has never made sense. So I think
So why are you surprised then, Matt, that it could be up and down throughout the fixtures?
Yeah, well, a big part of that is because obviously you can't. Because six teams from the AFC make the World Cup, which, if you ask me, is a little bit too much, but whatever. We've got 6 teams, which means an 8-team tournament doesn't make any sense, which I think it realistically could be on the grounds of quality. But you can't get it to 16. I mean, the likes of a Thailand or a Jordan missed out, and a 16-team tournament is maybe okay, but... you'd get some wonky teams in a 16-team.
It's the same worry people have for the World Cup, the Men's World Cup moving forwards, right? With it continually expanding, they go, there's going to be some weak fixtures in this.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I don't agree with that, but
it's a game of opinions. All right, very good. Very quickly, player of the tournament and how far do the Tillies go? Jacob or Matt?
Well, okay, no. So Tillies, they've got to make the final. I know that it's kind of all teed up and shaped up, and they've booked the biggest stadium of the tournament to host that semi-final, which, as Matt pointed out, should both Matildas and Japan top their groups, would end up with those two meeting in that fixture. So it's all kind of looking towards that. But I think I just see it, the Tillies making the final on home soil just makes sense to me. In terms of who the player of the tournament is, I don't know. I don't think it will be Sam Kerr. Not because I don't think she's going to be good. I think she'll be fine. But I just feel like maybe this is the chance for a surprise breakout. Somebody from another team maybe one of those, kind of weird underdog type runs that just, with these up and down fixtures that Matt was talking about, they're able to catch a, better team by surprise and make a really good run in the tournament. So honestly, I wouldn't nail down a single name. I mean, if the Matildas make the final, you'd anticipate it would probably be a Matildas player. And if they do make the final, Sam Kerr is likely to have had an impact. But I feel like, I don't know, with everything that Matt has said about, the possibilities in this tournament, it could be some wild name that none of us have discussed in the build up to the tournament, right? So it's really open. I think the Matildas will make it the final. In terms of who's going to win player of the tournament, I could not tell you.
I think one of the best players in the Matildas team, and yet one of the most underrated for the job she does as well. And my prediction for player of the tournament is Ellie Carpenter.
Yeah,
I think she is a very, very good fullback, and especially it'll be interesting to see how she's used with Joe in these competitive matches. But if you allow her to get forward, and particularly inside the field as well, she can absolutely kill teams by arriving into areas late and just being that extra number. So that's my tip, and screw it. I'm saying the Tillies are going to win the whole thing. They're going to go and lift the trophy. Obviously slightly emotional, but look, if they get past Japan in that semi, I think that's the big game. If they can do that, I think they carry it forward and win it. So that's my tip, Matt.
Yui Hasegawa for player of the tournament. I'm sorry, I'm just telling you facts. It will be a Japanese player.
Facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, guys. And look, I do have Japan winning it, but I will say this. I tell you what, they could look. They could go and draw South Korea to go and get in the opposing semi-final. Honestly, like it wouldn't surprise me if you get one of those Tillies games where it's like you get one or two names in the squad where you're thinking, oh, I don't know about the combination there. I think that it's a little bit on the weaker side, and maybe it's sort of one of those things that Joe manages by design. I still feel like I feel really conflicted because I also know that it's North Korea's last dance in terms of the world is professionalizing around them, and they don't have the edge that they once did. They'll keep their edge at youth level, and that's a whole other conversation. But I'm thinking an Australia versus North Korea final in Perth could happen as well. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just, in terms of look, the question you're going for with player of the tournament is obviously like who's the Tilly that you're just really looking after. Yeah. And that's where, again, when you put yourself in a do or die situation, I know it's crazy to say, but would it be Macca's time to just be on that stage again? Look, and I tell you this. Think about the way that like Tim Cahill didn't have to have the most glorious club career, but he still got us in the playoff against Syria. That was him. Jedinak, was on the injury bench more than he was on the pitch for Aston Villa, and he came out and destroyed Honduras. This is it. Like, I don't actually think the player needs to be in the most glorious position. They just need to find a way to be able to be on that stage, be given the platform, and the time will be right. I mean, that's what Sam Kerr literally did against England. And when you were sort of initially having your conversation about Macca, Jacob, I just immediately thought of Guillermo Ochoa, the famous World Cup legend who played like 6 World Cups in a row. And there's jokes about him literally like having his body frozen and coming out of a vortex because like has he actually ever had a club career? He hasn't, but he's been at World Cup after World Cup after World Cup after World Cup, and like he's just a total legend. And there is no reason why, especially in a game where we're up against it, be it against North Korea, be it against Japan, whatever the situation be, and Mac Arnold will just come out and make 3 or 4 just of the most amazing saves you've ever seen. 60,000 people in Perth or 80,000 people at Olympic Park going absolutely berserk, and that'll be the moment. So, and you know what though? Looking again at that, I referenced the 2018 final. What a spiritual moment to see the woman that failed on that stage, then 8 years later, be the one to win it. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a pretty good shout.